listening to the Grace Raised podcast. I'm your host, Leo Jaffrey. Join me at my kitchen table for conversations about real-world faith, raw stories, and discussion on walking out radical, jaw-dropping, uncomfortable, inconvenient grace through our relationship with Jesus. Come as you are and meet me in everyday life with our everyday messes and convictions. Welcome back to Grace Raised podcast. I am so glad to be here with you guys today. In true fashion, I'm definitely a week later than I wanted to be, but that's okay. We're still here. We made it. We just recently survived a cold snap here in down east Maine. And my goodness, we had some cold winds, but praise God, our family survived unscathed, except for the loss of some canned sparkling waters, which we left in our sunroom. We did have to bring our pig inside, so he became a house pig temporarily. You may have seen the pictures on our Facebook or Instagram. If you would like to follow me there, it is just going to be Grace Raised Podcast. You can find us either on Facebook or Instagram. But yeah, we have a picture of Buster, our pig, in our house with our daughter brushing him out. We had pig skin all over our house I think we brushed him like 6 times while he was in, because we don't get to do that very often in the wintertime. But he has really thick, coarse fur, and if you don't brush it out, sometimes his dried skin can get like really stuck to him. So my daughters, just spent so much time loving on him, and I had to vacuum up so much pig skin. It was everywhere. I don't even that's a thing. You have to vacuum it up. Dogs shed, you have to, vacuum their hair. The pig sheds its skin, so that's real fun. And no, it's not the kind that you can fry up, crackling, not the good stuff. Anyway, we survived it. It had gotten to about -49 with the wind chill, so it was quite cold, but we just kind of bundled up and stayed in and just loved, like I said, loved on the pig and each other. All of our birds made it. Our goats were fine. So it was just a really fun time to just reconnect with each other and just slow down for a little bit. So that was great. I also took the opportunity to clean those cobwebs, guys. My husband was appalled that I shared that with you. He thinks now that you must think we have the dirtiest house, a pigsty. No pun intended. But no, our house is clean. It's just not as clean as it used to be before I started working full time. But our cobwebs are cleaned. They have been taken care of. And I promised him that I wouldn't share too many details about other areas of our house that probably need to be cleaned still. So, but please, if you have cobwebs in your house, can you just shoot a message? Just let my husband know that it's normal for other people have cobwebs in their house too, and it doesn't mean that it's a horrible, messy, unclean, unsanitary environment. Cobwebs are normal, right, guys? Especially in winter time of the season where everything's closed up and it's normal. Please reassure him. Anyway, all that to say, it's been an eventful week. And then last night, oh my goodness, guys, this is not the first time. This is actually the second time that this has happened. We had been seeing some skunk tracks kind of around our chicken coop again. So we knew that there was a skunk around, which is surprising because they should still be hibernating right now. But this one is not. And last night decided to, for whatever reason, spray under our house. Yes, this is not the first time. In fact, it's been less than a year since this happened last. Last spring, we ended up with a mama and a whole bunch of babies that were living under our barn. And one unfortunate event led to another. The mama skunk got chased by a dog under our house in the middle of the night. Well, maybe it wasn't the middle of the night. It was probably closer to early morning. And she sprayed. But we were new homeowners and we're not we've never smelled a smell like this before. It was horrendous. So we were convinced certainly that there was a gas leak in our house. So we emptied, got our family out, put the dogs in the car, and called the fire department. Now, if you live in down east Maine, you know that everyone knows what's going on. All of our neighbors are driving by, watching these fire trucks pull up. And long story short, nope, not a gas leak, just a skunk. So our town knows that we are people now who call fire trucks for skunk sprays. So we did not make that mistake this time. We just suffered last night. It still smells in our house, although it's not as bad until you walk outside and realize what clean air smells like. So, and it's still not quite warm enough to open up your windows and air the house out. So as I'm recording this podcast, yes, my house smells like skunk, specifically the room that I'm recording in, but that's okay because it just brings back all these memories of our experience of getting settled into our house and learning all the things like when to and when not to call the fire department to your house. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I really have been planning and preparing this particular episode for a while. I originally actually wanted to open the series with this, but I wanted to give you a chance to kind of get to know me a little bit first. So as I've been preparing for this, I've started this Bible plan, which I've done many times in the past. Most of the time not completed it. I have a couple times when I was a lot younger, but it's been really difficult to be consistent with my readings, especially when you're doing like a year through a Bible program, because you're not focusing like on a specific thought or trying to like study something very specifically. It's just kind of this overview of the Bible, which is wonderful, but there are some books that are maybe a little bit more challenging to read through, such as like Leviticus. Even parts of Exodus can get kind of difficult to read through and just really like apply yourself to it. So when you're reading through genealogies and things like that, or old laws, those things can be a little bit hard to kind of push through and persevere. And those are usually the times when I start, missing a day or two, and then it turns into like 5 months. And yeah, but this time I'm really trying to be really dedicated to this. I'm not going to promise or make any kind of point to say I am going to finish it this time, because I may not, but I am trying to be diligent in that. And in any case, I've been reading through, and we've been working through Genesis, and now I'm in Exodus. There have been a couple themes that I'm seeing in this that I had never really made the connection or connected the dots with before. And it really has brought back so much of what God has taken us through, my family, in the last several years as he was preparing us and leading us to Maine. A really big theme being that when we are obedient to God and we trust and move forward and walk forward in faith to what he's called us to do, it doesn't always equal immediate, it doesn't always guarantee an immediate reaction of like blessing, or we don't always see how his hand could be working things out for good, or how his plans could be to bless us and to show his glory and his power immediately. Sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes things get worse before it gets better. And this is like especially true in the story of Moses, right? God calls Moses and tells him that he's going to speak for the people and that God is going to deliver the people out of Israel. So he's told to go to Pharaoh. And there's already this huge disagreement about how Moses doesn't want to speak because he's not an eloquent speaker. And so the Lord gives in, and he is compassionate for Moses and says, okay, take Aaron with you, your brother, and he can speak for you. But so they do this whole thing. It's already a huge deal that Moses is going before Pharaoh. And he asks Pharaoh to let God's people go so that they can have a feast for the Lord and rest. And you would think, right, that in Moses' obedience that God would honor and bless that, because he did something that was really hard and he did it stepping out in faith. But that's not what happened. And in fact, in the end of chapter 5 of Exodus, Moses turns to the Lord and says, "Oh Lord, why have you done evil to me, to my people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." That's a fair question. When Moses initially came to Pharaoh, Pharaoh denied him, obviously, and then inflicted the people with a much more significant amount of labor. They were being persecuted. They were suffering greatly because of Moses' obedience to God. And we're going to see kind of like through Exodus where God uses that to display his glory. He had a purpose and an intention behind that. So he wants Egypt to see God's greatness and that God is the one ultimately who delivers the Israelites from Egypt. But not just for the Egypt. It actually is more for Israel's sake, for his people's sake. And you're going to see this when, just trying to get to the right place here in my Bible. But when the Egyptians are swallowed by the sea and the people are delivered on the other side, Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians, so that the people feared the Lord and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. And then there's this whole song that the people sing about God's glory, his goodness, the fact that he is Lord. They'd say over and over, "You are Lord." And when God responded to Moses after he said, "Why are you doing this? You didn't for your people. You're making it worse," essentially. God says, he goes through this whole spiel about how he says, they are going to know that I am God. I am their deliverer. I do this. Like, it is me. I am the Lord. And that is what these people profess when they come through. And after all these plagues happen and all these things happen, the Lord delivers them in this huge, glory-filled, magnificent, miraculous way. And these people are convinced, only God could do this. Pharaoh in his kindness of heart didn't do this. God did this. He alone delivered his people. If Moses' obedience was immediately honored, right, and people were let go immediately, would they have seen God's power? Would they have believed in who he was calling them to be, and the next several hundred of years that were going to follow that experience of God leading his people out of Egypt and into the land of Canaan? So this is a profound picture of why sometimes our obedience isn't always immediately justified. It isn't always immediately fulfilled or blessed or exalted in a way that maybe we expect it to be. And I can see this is very evident in my own life. When my husband and I first got married, we decided that the first prayer we were going to pray, we wanted the Lord to use our life and to show who he was through us, whatever it cost. We just wanted him to be glorified and we wanted to know him. And so we prayed that as a couple, and we were not fully prepared for what was going to follow that. So essentially, a couple years after our marriage, we had already been kind of going through these seasons early on in our marriage where we were doing a lot of growing. We were starting to recognize, and the Lord was revealing to us a lot of areas in our life where maybe we had some false doctrine and some trauma and other things that had shaped the way that we viewed God and the way that we viewed his love and how to walk and live for him. And so we were just praying for an escape, I think, more than anything. If we were being really honest, we wanted a way to kind of escape our situation that we were in. And the Lord told us very clearly to leave where we were living in upstate New York and to go to Wisconsin. We did have a connection in Wisconsin. My husband's biological father lived there, and we hadn't yet gotten to know them very well. And so there were other things that we could justify our move with. They had a great program out there that was just really phenomenal for special needs kids. So we really wanted to get our daughter some help. And then there was also a different program that my husband wanted to try to get into for a career potential. And but at the end of the day, we knew that God was calling us to leave everything and to go to Wisconsin, and that he had a plan and a purpose in that. And we knew that by taking that action, we were stepping into faith in a really major way. We were leaving everything behind. We left our job, we left our home, we left all of our friends, our community of believers, and we went and restarted somewhere that we really didn't have any established solid relationships. We were starting a relationship with his biological father at the time, and his family, but outside of that, we really didn't have anything else. And we were still grieving and healing through some pretty traumatic things that had happened between our families, and just some stuff that really had come up that was bringing us back to, Lord, who are you? and who am I in you? And how are you shaping me? Because this doesn't feel right. And so we did. We moved. There were just so many factors that contributed to the first few months, and it really left us in this place of just absolute destitute. Like, God, we must have misheard you. We must have misunderstood what you were asking us to do, because right now we feel like completely lost, and that you did not intend for us to be here, because otherwise you would have provided for us. And what we didn't see at that time was that God was providing in his own way. And really what was happening was he was stripping everything away. And we needed that in order to start rebuilding. So we were there for, I think, like 4 to 6 years, somewhere in that range. We lived in Wisconsin. And during that time frame, my husband began recognizing trauma that he didn't know he had from his childhood and from just some experiences that he has had. And all of these things were coming up that he didn't even know existed. The same was happening for me. I was going through an extremely traumatic event and memories from things that had happened to me in my childhood, and just a lot of tension and division in our families. There was just a lot of confusion, and it just felt like everything was chaos. Nothing really fully made sense, except that we were both losing whatever identity we thought we had at that time. And in that process, we were, taking care of our daughter, who was having a lot of health issues. We had another little girl, our youngest, obviously, and, trying to build a community and to have support while still trying to figure out who we were. All of these things from our childhoods, all these things from our history and our background suddenly didn't kind of fit with who God was creating us to be. And it took a really, really long time. I mean, it was years while we were there. We struggled financially in ways that I couldn't have even ever prepared for. There were definitely times where we were hungry, or we struggled to get food, struggled to have clothing. We would borrow money to pay our rent and then not be able to pay our rent because we were paying back the loan. It was a very challenging time. My husband worked an absurd amount of hours, but during the season, we were also isolated from everything else that had been, maybe obstructing our view of who God was. So God removed us from our family for a time. He removed us from our past and our history, from our communities, and anything that was safe. And he put us kind of in this bubble where all of a sudden we had to be completely dependent on God, completely dependent on his provision, completely dependent on his presence. We needed we need perseverance. We needed grace. We needed peace. And in that season, it felt very lonely at times, but we did have community in several different ways and forms. We had a small community of people that came around our daughter and us as we were walking through her medical stuff and her disability. And we had a community in a church and some small groups that was very life-giving to us and really played a huge role in helping us relearn what it meant to follow and to know Jesus, what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus and how that changes you. And God used that time to really build our relationship with him. Like, he took us out of religion, took us out of the things that we grew up believing, and started reframing our mind to just be so absorbed in him because that's all we had, or it felt like that was all we had. And now we have a relationship with him. So during that season of our life, we had healed from traumas that we didn't even know existed. There are many, many relationships that have been fully restored and are healthy. There are things that had come to light that I didn't know or see before that have been able to help me personally in just being able to establish boundaries and to understanding of why God was, maybe removing some people from my life, or why God was protecting me from some situations. So during this time of just intense hardship, intense suffering, isolation, we call it our desert years, God used that to really establish our relationship with him. And that's where we really started falling in love with him. That's where we started to know his name. I'm sorry, I just pounded my desk. But that's where we started to know his name, know the sound of his voice. He began showing things and revealing things about his character and his goodness and his faithfulness. We saw him and learned that he is our provider. He is our healer. He is he feeds us. He clothes us. He gives us community. He is enough. Even if everything else is taken away, he is enough. And that's really where this season is really where we both kind of came to this place where we realized, even if we lost everything, lost our children, lost each other, had no friends, no connections to our past, God was still enough. He still satisfied our needs enough by himself and in himself that all of a sudden these scary possibilities of what the future could hold didn't seem that scary. Yes, when you lose things, obviously you're going to grieve. There's going to be stuff that, and we're not saying that we came to this conclusion that like God was enough and so we can just be happy and nothing hard would ever affect us or have a negative impact on us. But for me especially, Jesus became my all, and in a way that I had complete faith and complete trust that I could face anything and know that he was holding me in the palm of his hands and that he was going to satisfy me, to satisfy my earthly physical needs and my spiritual needs. And then, as we kind of healed and as we kind of came to all of these conclusions and spiritually just grew in ways that we so desperately needed to grow, the Lord, then called us out of Wisconsin to Maine, which is where we are now. And seeing the difference between those two moves, oh my goodness, guys. When we moved to Wisconsin, we lost everything. We suffered. We lost, we had our identity stolen when we first moved there. We were in the negative in our account. We didn't have a job. The job that my husband then eventually got was so dangerous and so stressful that, it was just, oh my goodness, it was so hard. It took us a while to find a church and get invested in a church. It took us a while to establish a relationship. So we were just alone for a lot of it. And then my daughter got super sick and started having all of these issues, had major surgery. We really lost a lot of connection and relationship with family. We lost a lot from our childhood that we had been holding on to for a long time. And then I was disabled. And I had to give up the idea and to lay it at the feet of the Father that, Lord, even if I can't walk, even if I can't do these things that you want me to do, you are enough. And once we came to that, and as we're walking through all these horrendous things, God is like, okay, I'm going to start healing you. I'm going to show you who I am in you and that I'm your strength. And then, we get through the season and all of a sudden he's like, okay, now you're going to move to Maine. And for this move, it was the complete opposite. It was his provision and providing exactly what we needed, exactly when we needed it, in ways that completely outshone or met our needs and desires. Between providing a home in a market where you really can't find homes and certainly could not find a home in our budget, to having the money that we needed within like a 6-week window. I think we had to come up with like $12,000 that we didn't have and we had no means to find. He showed us love through the people in our lives. We got connected with a group of people right away upon moving here. We reestablished and continued to grow really healthy relationships with our family that are here. God provided a job for me, a full-time job that I love, and it's revealing all of these skills that I didn't even know I had. And I'm learning all these new things about God's people and just people in general. And now we have all these animals. I'm watching my kids get healthy. So yes, like our oldest still has a lot of health issues, but there's a joy in her that has not been there in a long, long time. There's a peace and just a softness. I don't know how else to describe it, but just like there's just this presence of absolute peace and serenity. And so we've been looking back at these pictures from this last year, where it's almost a year. Next week, it'll be a full year that we've been here. And we see all these miraculous ways that God has provided in this move and just reconfirmed, like, this is where I want you. This is where I want you. I'm going to provide. Above and beyond anything that you thought I could do, I'm going to do for you. Man, what a contrast, right? So obedience and following God in faith does not always mean immediate reward or blessing, but it also doesn't mean that you won't be rewarded or blessed. God used that time for the Israelites and to magnify who he was and to establish who he was to them. And then he used times like another example would be like Joseph. When Joseph was put into a really hard situation, God blessed him and he was with him over and over again. You see this spoken all throughout his story in Genesis 39. The Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. The Lord was with Joseph and blessed the Egyptian's household for Joseph's sake. the Lord was with Joseph and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. There was this horrific story of Joseph being sold as a slave into the Egyptian world, right? And then falsely accused and put in prison for years. And yet God made him prosper and blessed him through that, and ended up using Joseph to save hundreds of thousands of people, And God can do amazing things, and we will not always see what his plan is, right? We don't know, but that can't stop us from stepping out in faith, even if things get harder. Sometimes they are. Probably more times than not, it's going to get a little bit harder. But he is going to display his glory and his goodness. He's going to build us up. He's going to teach us his character, and he's going to reveal how satisfying he is. We get to know his voice and hear him. We have a choice in these moments where things get really hard. Maybe our situation feels unfair, or it feels like God's abandoned us. And there were absolutely numerous times during our stay in Wisconsin where it felt like God had abandoned us. It felt like we were on our own, or we did something horrifically wrong and we were being punished for it. But God used it for good in ways that we could have never seen coming. And there's so much to that story. There's so many stories I can share more details about in, that time of life that we are walking. But the biggest thing that I take away when I look at that, it's not remembering all those specific incidences. Now when I look back, even though I know and I can read my prayer journal and see all of these just absolute gut-wrenching cries to the Lord for help, all I see and all I hear when I relive those memories is God's voice and his ever-presence, his gentleness, his grace for me, even in times where I wanted to curse his name, even in times when I wanted to give up or question his goodness and faithfulness. And I hear his tender, gentle kindness, him knowing what I was walking through. He saw me the way he saw the Egyptians suffering. Not the Egyptians, I'm sorry. His people suffering under the Egyptian oppressors. He saw the things that I was losing. And in his gentleness, and his kindness, and in his grace, he took that tragic mess and he built me up, and he spoke to my heart and gave me this new life in him and my family. I'm not scared of hard things anymore because I got to know and experience the presence of God in the midst of those hardest situations. And there was a peace that I learned, a joy that I learned in the midst of the chaos. And he was glorified through it. There were a lot of people that were watching us walk through that season of our life. A lot of people that came and prayed with us, and a lot of people that saw the change in who we were from when we moved to Wisconsin and who we were when we moved away. We were not the same. We were very different people. We were people that were touched and changed by the Spirit of God. People who experienced the glory and the grace of the Lord. Once you've been touched by his Spirit and you really have come to that place of choosing, am I going to trust you and believe you, even in the face of absolute hardness, even when it's dark and it's stormy and you don't know how you're going to get out of the situation? Is God enough? Do you trust him fully to be your provider, to be your protector, to be your sustainer? I think when you really encounter that and believe it and know it's true, it changes you. And it gives you a life and a light and a confidence to stand on his word and his promises in ways that you couldn't before, And a lot of times we have to go through these things. It talks in the whole New Testament, there are so many books in the Bible. And I know I mentioned some of these in the last episode, but James is a big one. He allows these trials and fires to refine us and to sharpen us and to show his glory and goodness. Going back to not the Egyptians, I'm sorry. I just really like the word Egyptians. It has such a fanciful, it flows off the tongue so nicely. I really mean the Israelites. When God rescued the Israelites, they weren't, like their story isn't over once those Egyptians were swallowed by the waves of the Red Sea. Their story continues, and God continues to show and teach them his faithfulness. And it's kind of interesting because I was going through a couple chapters and I was like, wow, this is kind of very similar to what Jesus was teaching when he came. So listen to this. In Exodus 6, he is, oh, nope, I'm in the wrong place. So in Exodus 15, he shows that he is the healer. In Exodus 16, he is their provider by providing bread and meat from the sky, literally from the heaven. Just, here you go, people. He provides water, living water, from a rock in the middle of nowhere because he is their sustainer. In Exodus 17, he demonstrates how he delivers them in battle. He fights their battles for them. In Exodus 18, he shows that he is a fair and good and righteous judge, right? All of those things are represented in the gospel and in Jesus' teachings. The stories in the Old Testament, they echo the name of Jesus and they show and demonstrate God's grace. The people in Israel were learning that as they walked through the wilderness. As my family walked through our own wilderness, God demonstrated and showed all of those things to us. He protected us. He defended us. He sustained us. He healed us. We literally experienced miraculous healing. We experienced miraculous provision of food. We experienced miraculous provision of housing, miraculous provision of deliverance from situations and things that intended to harm us. And he was a fair judge to us when there were situations where people were making accusations against us that were not true, that were false. And he was able to bring people alongside us and to show that we had a God who stood by us and delivered us. And now we experience this in our salvation, where we are given that freedom of grace, and he doesn't judge us anymore for the sins of our past because we're saved by grace. Sorry, I'm getting really worked up right now. It's really hard for me to talk sometimes about our time in Wisconsin because there's just so much deep emotion, and it's really hard to share. I want to share all the details, right? But at the end of the day, the details, that's not really where you see the heart of Jesus. You see the heart of Jesus in the moments of being on our knees and how he provides and comes through. And that's what he did with the Israelites in Egypt. That's what he did with the Israelites in the wilderness. That's what he did for Joseph when he was a prisoner and sold into slavery in Egypt, and how he brought the Israelites and sustained them with their own brethren, by provision of their own brethren. No matter what you're walking through, God is walking it with you. And even if he's calling you to step in faith, or maybe you've stepped out in faith and things aren't really going the way you expected, trust him. He is God, and he is going to use your life in ways where the people around you, the people involved in your life, are going to say, wow, that is truly the Lord. The Lord did this. The Lord redeemed you. The Lord provided for you. The Lord healed you. All glory and honor to Christ. Be encouraged. Lean into the Spirit of the Lord. Don't be afraid to get on your knees and to bring your suffering to the Lord. Bring your heartache. Allow him to minister to you. Seek him in the night. Don't give up just because it's dark, just because he's quiet for a while. But really lean in and trust him. Is he enough? Ask him to teach you to believe in his provision and to establish those truths in your heart and in your lives today. Because I promise it will change you. It will change the way you see the Lord. It will change your faith from being something that's practiced and being something that is living and alive. Just pray for his blessings over you this week, and that you would just be encouraged by this. And I would love to talk more about this another time. But if you have questions, or if there is something here that really struck a chord with you, I just invite you to let me know. Again, you can follow me on my Facebook and Instagram channel, and you can send me messages that way, or you can email me at thegraceraisedpodcast.com. I hope you guys have a blessed week, and I will chat with you guys later.
You have been listening to the Grace Raised podcast. Thank you for joining our discussion today. If you would like to submit a question, a story, or sign on to be a guest on the show, please reach out to Leah at thegraceraisedpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, I pray that you encounter the grace and glory of God in your day-to-day life. May you experience His mercy and His rich joy even in the midst of your messes and your everyday experiences.